Welcome to this edition of Music Math Podcast at ccmixter.org. Hey, hello, and welcome to MMT MMP number 25, Stargazing in the Moonlight. I'm your host, Kara Square, and I am thrilled to be here with you today. I have an awesome show. We're going to start up pretty upbeat and poppy and rocky. Then we're going to go into some 70s feeling songs, which will take us into some smooth jazz and then some sexy R&B. Then we're going to end the show with some more mellow music, a little orchestral action, some dark electro, and then this beautiful electro journey. So without further ado, let's hear some awesome tunes. We're going to start with Just Beginning by Covert Keys, featuring Snowflake. This is an EDM type song, electronic dance music. That'll take us into a rocking hip-hop song called Super Rich by Alex Baroza, featuring Hans Adam and Faded Millions. That one was an Ed pick. That will take us into some funky pop by Scomber called Stargazer, featuring My Vanilla World. And we'll end this set with another song featuring My Vanilla World called Empty Lines by Psychedelic Pedestrian. That one is some really dynamic Euro pop. And so, here goes. Enjoy! Hey. I hope you enjoyed that last set. This one's going to start with Bounce by Bento Box featuring Slow Starter. It's a 70s feeling British pop song, which will lead us into another 70s feeling song. This one's a bluesy American folk song called House of the Rising Sun by Unreal DM featuring Javelinus, which will take us right into Magma Vander's smooth jazz remix of Siggy Burns called See the Wilderness. The vocals are beautiful and it's got just a really nice feel there. And we'll end with an Ed pick called Baby Come, smiley face. It doesn't say smiley face, but there's a smiley face by Love Shadow featuring Jairus.
20. 15. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Import episode 42. It's 21st January 2017, streaming directly from Singapore. It's WeBuild Live.
All right, this time on WeBuild Live, we'll be chatting about computer network infrastructure with Rahul.
Yay! Hi, Rahul. Welcome to episode 42 of WeBuild Live. I'm your host, Sayani, and on soundboard is Chinmay. Uh-oh.
It's episode 42.
42, yeah.
You know, this is the episode that answers. This is the episode which is the answer of all things in life.
Literally everything.
Yes. All right, and Rahul is going to try to answer
yes,
that.
so Rahul is going to give us the answer to life and universe and everything.
What a guest to have.
Answers 42.
All right. Welcome to this episode 42, Rahul. And how did we meet Rahul, Chinmay? We met him in NUS Hackers.
Yes.
National University of Singapore. They have a hacker student group. And at that time, he was a student there. And we met him there. And from there on, Rahul has gone on to dabble a lot with network and infrastructure and security. And that's why we decided to bring him on board and discuss all this.
That's true.
So, Rahul, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Rahul. I do random, pretty much everything that needs doing in some weird way or another at Overseas Family School. I do a bunch of network stuff. I build a bunch of prototype apps for the school. I do a whole bunch of automation things, and I dabble a little bit in helping people develop curriculum.
All right. So we will get more into what Rahul does. But in the meantime, Chinmay, you have a gift for Rahul, right?
Yep, I do. So as is tradition at the beginning of the show, we welcome our guests with a so-called malform query.
Mm-hmm.
And Rahul, your malform query for today is, what kind of network does a hobbit have? What kind of network does a hobbit have?
I don't know.
A Tolkien ring network. Get it? Tolkien ring? Tolkien?
Oh my god.
J.R.R. Tolkien?
Why?
The guy who
Yeah,
made...
I know. The author of Lord of the Rings.
Yes. And
Tolkien.
Token ring?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
Yep.
Token
And like
ring.
PNC connectors and awesomeness.
Yes.
All right. So there goes the morning. Saturday morning. I hope you're all awake. And welcome to the audience in the live chat as well. So if you are listening to us and if you have questions for Rahul, we will answer them live during the show. It's gitter.im/webuild.sg/live, or you can just hit the website at live.webuild.sg and start chatting with the audience there. Start trolling Rahul. I mean, start asking questions to
Hey,
Rahul.
I shouldn't actually encourage trolling, Sam.
Okay,
That's not...
fine. We should not.
Be nice, people.
Yes, we are nice. All right, so let's get on to the topic of the day, which is computer network infrastructure. So Rahul, you have set up a lot of infrastructure for offices, network infrastructure. So if you're put in charge of setting up one, what are some of the first few steps you will take?
Well, the absolute first step is figuring out, this is slightly not so politically correct thing to say, but you need to figure out how much political capital you have in the organization.
Before you start, sorry, could you bring your microphone closer? You seem to be modulating in and out, or maybe add a couple of dBs of gain or something.
I will add a little bit of gain.
All right. Bring your mouth close. Yes.
Or just come closer to the microphone, because
Okay.
you seem to be getting in and out of the microphone zone.
Right. How about now?
Yes.
Yes, sounds better.
Okay, brilliant. So first thing you need to find out is how much political capital you have, because it's a very common thing when someone goes, I'm going to set up the most awesome network here, and the entire office just goes, why? We just want the internet to work.
Mm-hmm.
But then they don't realize that you need to spend money to get the internet to work.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
okay.
You're going to have to do the whole chat with management thing. But assuming you've managed to do all that, the very first thing you need to do is figure out your requirements. How many users are you going to have? Both wired and wireless. I mean, it's very rare for people to plug in their computers these days because no one really uses desktops quite as much.
Yep.
But you definitely are going to have things like printers, blah, 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 blah. And take it from me, the more wired devices you have, the better your life is going to be. Wireless is just, you'd figure that by 2017 and what was it, 4 revisions of Wi-Fi standards, people would have figured out some way to have better debugging. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Wi-Fi just has absolutely terrible metrics in terms of a lot of things. So stick whatever you can on Ethernet, and then you're going to have a bunch of users on Wi-Fi, at which point you need to do a bunch of things. One, plan out, based on your area that you need to cover, should you be perhaps getting a bunch of small access points if you have people in a bunch of small rooms, or should you get something like a Xeris array that has 8 radios, 10 radios, all the way up to 20 radios in it?
So what are these?
Cover a
These are
large
like really big access points that have dedicated radios for a different user?
It's not so much dedicated radio per user, but you have a bunch of radios, and what they do is each radio, typically, if you're running 5 gigahertz, might run on a different channel. Sometimes you run on the same channel.
So it's per channel, different radios kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the idea is that if you have too many people associating with one channel, these days you have fancy things you can do and hand them off to the other radio.
Okay.
So you basically can serve a few thousand people from just what looks like one single access point. In reality, it's a cluster of them. That works better if you have like single large areas. If you have a whole bunch of small areas, it's a lot better to just get smaller, cheaper access points and put a lot of them around.
Right. Okay.
So that's requirements-wise. You need to know how many users you're going to have, where your users are going to be. That's also very important. How spread out they are, how close together.
So you need to know about the physical location.
You need to know the physical layout. You need to know the layout of the location of the people within your physical layout. Because as we all know with Wi-Fi, walls are bad.
Right.
But walls are also amazing if you're using 802.11 AC on 5 gigahertz, because then you can reasonably say, oh, this access point serves this room.
Right.
That's it.
Okay, so you won't accidentally, because it's also both ways, right? If you are getting an access point too far out than where it's supposed to get it, it's actually a problem.
Yeah. Something that a lot of people do is they buy an access point and they go, hey, I can control the power of this. I'm going to set everything to maximum. No, bad. Don't do this.
Okay.
What you want to do is design your cell size such that people are on their closest access point you want some overlap because you don't want a dead zone, but you don't want too much of an overlap.
Right.
Okay.
And ideally, if you can engineer overlap to be through a wall, that would be perfect, because then you get a lovely little drop off over there.
Right. Okay. And with AC, I guess because of the channel width? Why are walls?
It's mostly because you can do beamforming.
Oh, okay.
If you have a whole bunch of reflections, which is nice.
Right. Okay.
I'm looking forward to 802.11 AD with its 60 gigahertz won't even go through a piece of paper thing.
That'll be hard.
That'll be fun.
Great. So let's say you have already set up the infrastructure and everything is done and the team is running and well. Are there some common things you monitor on a daily basis?
Yeah, there's 2 general categories I see. I think. Well, actually 3. The most important is, can your users actually connect and get whatever they need to do done?
Connect. Okay.
That's that's just a general metric of like, are people yelling at you that something's broken? Usually shouldn't be the case in any office, any properly set up office network. But the 2 general categories of things that you want to monitor, I guess, would be performance stats and security.
Okay.
And it's something where some people like to say, oh, performance is good enough, nobody really cares anymore.
Okay.
But then some people go, security is the most important thing, or performance is the most important thing, blah, blah, blah. There's this entire argument all over the internet perpetually, and there's also user access, UX versus security is another big
Yep.
thing. But when it comes to things like Wi-Fi, one nice way of doing it is to have like a trusted network and an untrusted network. I mean, a lot of people are starting to do these even at home these days, which is kind of nice. You have like an untrusted network your guests connect to, and then you have your network. So with performance stats, things you want to know in a big network generally would include what is the peak traffic on a port, because if you have a gigabit backbone and one of your ports is hitting that full gigabit, you might want to consider adding a second port and aggregating it in.
Okay.
And then the other thing you want to track is things like port errors, because in the case of my office, when we built out the new campus, there was something like 6,000 or 8,000 Ethernet links.
Whoa.
Wow, that's a lot.
Was it 6,000 or 8,000? It's a lot of Ethernet links. We're
Okay.
talking like a few hundred 48 port switches, almost 200 of them, I think.
Wow. That's a lot of switches to manage.
It's a lot of switches. It's a lot of ports. And the one thing is, when you put that many cables in, it doesn't matter how much, how good your contractor is. You will still have port errors. That's a normal thing.
Yep.
So you want to track these errors, and then 90% of the time, it's going to be a bad cable.
Okay.
So you just make a log of these and you fix
Well,
it.
I'm guessing if you have that many ports, you have at least that many cables or even more. So
yeah.
Having one bad cable among multitudes of thousands is probably kind of regular.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have like the most awesome setup, you will have bad cabling. You just need to go back and fix it at some point.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing is talking about performance metrics. It's very easy to get performance metrics on managed switches because they just give you everything over SNMP.
Okay. SNMP
Wi-Fi
is
simple network management protocol.
Simple network
Technically,
management.
it can be used for management as well, but most people don't really do that. They use it as a read-only stats thing.
Okay.
Wi-Fi, on the other hand, even if you're using enterprise gear, you don't really get that much visibility into what's going on.
Okay.
But you just like, the one thing is definitely get enterprise gear. If you're on a budget, get Ubiquiti or something like that. It's like $200 an AP.
Yep.
It's pretty affordable. I mean, you can even get like the $100 ones if you don't need to cover a large area.
Okay. And these will give you some kind of metrics, some kind of
they'll tell you fairly useful things. Like if you have one person eating up your entire Wi-Fi bandwidth in a room, you know who it is and whether they should or should not be doing it. Like if they're torrenting something and at work they shouldn't be doing,
right?
Things like that. The other thing about performance is your edge is very important, because generally you don't really have much of a throughput problem within your building or your campus or your network. You will have problems at the edge because, I mean, internet's not exactly that cheap on a business line.
Right.
For like 300 megabits, you're going to be paying a decent amount already. Okay. So you want to have some sort of QoS. It's pretty much mandatory.
The QoS is quality of service. Right?
Yeah, and the more modern quality of service mechanisms, there's DSCP, which I can't remember the full form for, but I'm sure you can look it up. DSCP? DSCP,
okay.
That basically tags, it's like a new version of the IP QoS that we had 10, 20 years ago.
So different...
Which basically says, for example, VoIP traffic like we have right now on Mumble would be classified as early forward, which is, this is a very small bandwidth connection, but send these packets through as quick as you can, please.
Right.
And then you have bulk transfers.
So this is based on protocols?
Yeah, this is based on the IP. It's on the IP layer.
Okay.
And whatever sends it will have to tag it.
Okay, so in this case, for example, if my computer has to tag it, or how does it work?
Mumble would be tagging it.
Okay,
Mumble. In general, Mumble might actually be automatically tagging it. I haven't actually tested.
Okay.
But if you're using Asterisk or any big VoIP systems for like phones, they definitely tag it for you.
Right, right. So they'll tag it, and then your switches will basically give priority to
your switches will not, because your switches are layer 2.
Okay.
They only see Ethernet frames.
Right,
and there's Ethernet QoS as well, which you can use.
Okay.
But they wouldn't be seeing the DSCP or the IP QoS tags. That would be up to your routers.
Okay. So your routers will see that and then forward that quickly.
Yeah. So in the other category of things you look through the security one, you just want to have like monitor everything.
But how do you make sense of the data? Because I mean, for like a large installation, you have
Triggers maybe, I don't know.
thousands of
Yeah.
net connections at any given time.
So a lot of things that I like to do is basically have one place that hoovers up all your logs across your entire network.
Okay.
And then you have a whitelisting or graylisting system. So like these are lines that I expect to see all the time. It's perfectly normal. You can drop them. I don't even want to see them.
Okay.
And then you have things like these are lines where if it happens, say with like this many times in this many minutes, I don't want to see it. But if it goes above that threshold, now that's
I
a
want
problem.
to see it. Mhm.
But are these things that are these well-known systems or well-known
It's unique to every
heuristics?
campus.
Okay.
It's unique to every campus because everyone's traffic patterns are different.
So
Like
there's something
if
that
you're
you
running,
have to learn as you sort of work
yeah,
through your
you'll basically have to roll it out, get bombarded with logs for a day or two, and that will let you figure out what's going on.
Okay.
But it's pretty easy to like very quickly remove all the boom, boom, boom. I know these are supposed to be their things. If you're working in like a software engineering firm, guaranteed you're going to have a whole bunch of SSH connections out to AWS.
Right.
And you generally know what sort of connections these are going to be, and you can just be like, yeah, this is expected. It's perfectly fine.
Right.
If you see a bunch of OpenVPN, you're like, should I be having this? Maybe. Or should I not be having this?
Right. Okay. Cool.
So I think at this point of time, I think it's a perfect time to ask, what are some of the tools you use to get the job done, whether it's setting up the infrastructure or even monitoring?
So a lot of things that I use is very old school.
Old school,
in terms
cool.
of- yeah, very old school, cool. Very old school. So for like network intelligence, is a whole bunch of things. We use a bunch of open source projects. I'm a big fan of Isinga. At work, though, we use Nagios, which is it's a monitoring solution that's very good at telling you, is something up, is it down, is it in a flapping state, things like that. Are my disks filling up? The other thing we use a lot of is Cacti, which gives you cute little graphs for everything from CPU usage, network utilization, to number of clients connected to this web service right now.
Right. Okay.
How
And
about,
there's a whole bunch of bespoke things that are built with the logs and the
Right,
SNMP
yeah.
information coming in from the switches.
What about like the SNMP stuff? Do you crawl that yourself, or do you have tools to do that?
It depends on what we're pulling. So both Nagios and Cacti pull SNMP data. They do different things with it.
Okay.
Cacti, for example, will be pulling things like the traffic on every port.
Okay.
So if something maxes out, we can see that it's maxed out.
Right.
But there are things that we crawl ourselves using either the logs coming in from the switches or SNMP. Things like, I now have a database. If you give me an IP address or a MAC address, I can tell you exactly where on campus that is right now.
Right. Okay. That's very handy because
Yeah, and for
I
Wi-Fi,
guess-
it's like down to room level.
Oh, nice. Because
Or
I guess
Ethernet is support.
because I guess with that kind of a size, just figuring out where something physically something is coming from is
Yeah.
really hard.
Yeah, and sometimes you get a loop in your network. I mean, STP, spanning tree protocol, will prevent any craziness from happening, but you
Okay.
still have a loop on your network and you still want to get rid of it.
Right.
In this case, you can just be like, oh, right, I know it's between these two ports on this one switch over in that room somewhere. Send someone to fix it.
Do you do like or do you use tools, or do you like manually draw out network architecture diagrams? What's connected to what, and how it's supposed to flow? Because I can imagine this, like even before you deploy, like that kind of planning could be extremely critical.
Yeah, and we spent almost an entire year planning out our network. The one thing I would recommend pretty much everyone does these days is to not do a traditional network that's like layer 2 everywhere.
Okay.
Back in the old days, you just put a bunch of switches, hook them up to a giant Cisco box, in the basement. You spend like $300,000 or something on one of these, and sure, that was one way of doing it, but now you've got a lot of Ethernet running down there.
Right.
The approach that I strongly prefer is something where you aggregate early and aggregate often.
Okay.
So in our case, we have a square building, which makes it trivial because we just call it 4 wings.
Right.
The wings aggregate, and the wings aggregate at the floor,
Okay.
and that's about the extent of the layer 2 network.
Okay.
Every floor is a separate layer 2 network.
Right. So there's basically one router at every floor and every
Yeah.
wing.
Yeah.
And then all
There's
of
one.
them.
There's one router at every floor. The wings are just switches.
Okay. Right.
But
And
what this lets us do is, between this and I think the 4 months that Ivan and I sat down coming up with ways to name every network thing on campus,
right.
now given a name, I can tell you exactly where something
Right.
is.
So,
You know,
so, so
it's everything's encoded in the DNS name because DNS is inherently hierarchical.
right. Okay. So you're using DNS internally as well, so you can directly talk to things using DNS instead of having to remember IP addresses of all sorts of things.
Yeah, we have a few thousand DNS entries that are just local and internal only.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, that's exactly why DNS was invented, right? But
Yeah.
more for a global scale. But once you start looking at infrastructures that are that big, you want to start using these kind of tools. And this is so basic. This is something that even your browsers and every single tool in the world kind of knows how to use. So
Yeah.
Rahul, in terms of tools, do you script up anything? If you do, what
There's a
language?
lot of scripts.
Yep.
So it depends on a bunch of things. If we need to build something that is going to run long term and collect data, do something with it, process it, shove it somewhere. These days we've started using Go for it,
Go.
just because
Okay.
Go gives you, a single static binary. You stick it somewhere, you run it. It's not going to go insane generally.
Interesting. So
sometimes
you just
the
use compile it and just use the binary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if it's something that isn't running all the time, it's a cron job or it's a one-off or something like that, or something that runs very rarely, that tends to be written in Python most of the time.
Okay. Hello. So let's see. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, guys?
to the network, it seems. Hello,
Oh, noes.
network. Hello, come back, network.
Really?
Seems fine now. Okay, strange. For a second, I had network issues.
Hello. Can you guys hear us? Okay, Mike can hear us. Oh well.
Sean's having network problems because the poor little packets are traveling halfway around the world.
I guess the packets that were traveling were really unhappy about us talking about more packets.
Yes, they're being jealous.
I think we had jealous packets problems.
All right. Okay. So that's cool. Let's talk about graphing and graphing these logs. Like, do you use any graphing library or graphing framework?
Pretty much everything that is graphed in this case, usually for like the office case for me, everything goes into Cacti, which uses RRD tool internally to do all the graphing.
Sorry, what was that again? Your
What
voice
was
dropped out.
Cacti
Okay,
Cacti.
uses
All right,
RRD tool underneath to do all the
RRD.
graphing.
Oh, I know this thing.
Yeah, RRD tool is another very old school thing.
Yeah, it's super old. I remember back in the day. Remember during the haze, there was this guy somewhere in Pongal or whatever who was like monitoring his own haze stuff, and he was using RRD tool to graph it. That's super old school.
But for my own infra, I have a bit of Grafana going around. I used to use InfluxDB as my data store, but InfluxDB started getting a bit unreliable. Is not the right word for it. It didn't eat my data, but it's not a very easy thing to maintain just because most distros don't ship it by default.
Okay.
InfluxDB, that's interesting. It's a time series database.
Yeah, it's a time series database. It's really good for things where you have a massive flow of events and you want to
based on timestamps. Yeah. I have just started exploring it due to IoT stuff because it's also like sensor data coming up. Okay. Okay. Right. So let's talk about challenges then. Like, what are the challenges that you deal with network infrastructure on a daily basis?
Challenges generally involve one of the two categories of things that I mentioned earlier for monitoring. It's pretty much your two categories of challenges. Sometimes you get strange things like why are people from this random IP address I don't recognize trying to SSH into my switches? So that's you always get these weird drive-by attacks, especially in the case where you have guest networks available to people who visit and stuff.
So when you mean by drive-by attacks, that means people try to get in, try to do something naughty and go out?
No, I'm saying the people walking around with devices that they don't realize are doing these attacks.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
you just, you'll just see
that,
like a
is that
random
malware
innocent
or
machine.
people like?
Probably malware of some
Okay.
sort, because reliably I've found that whenever such a thing happens, it tends to attack its gateway. instead of
Okay.
trying to attack like anything else.
Right.
Mhm.
But then the fun thing is it tries this and then it gets an SSH version mismatch or something like that,
Right.
and then it fails and it shows up in my logs.
Okay.
I mean, if
Interesting.
it succeeded, it would still show up in my logs. But still.
Sure. So I guess
so
logging all these things is, or setting up logs for all of these things is also
Yeah.
turning them on. In fact, at all of
Yeah.
these levels. is
Yeah.
a-
On a big, even on a small network, but definitely on a big network, your only tool is intelligence.
Right.
You want intelligence, you want visibility.
So do you guys have like a network room? What is it called? NOC,
NOC.
right? Network
Operations Center, yes.
Yes. Do you have that? With
Of course.
like
But if you think about it, any room where there's one person sitting down who does networky things is a NOC by definition.
with a few LCD screens and charts and
No,
graphs?
I'm not a big fan of pull-based stats or pull-based alerts. I
Okay.
don't want a screen to go red when something goes wrong.
Okay.
I want to get a push alert when something goes wrong.
All right.
So I
Because
guess
if you just have like screens up there, you just get used to them, and at some point
Yeah, you
get
get
sort of like little
desensitized.
desensitized to it
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you know you just have like, yeah, but that one cell is always red. Who cares about it, right? And
That's
you don't want
true.
to have that sort of situation.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I've read this mindset in design theory as well. They say that you have to be very careful of what notifications you send to users.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll get desensitized.
It's
okay.
it's a lot like how in Python, I think
Mm-hmm.
they have the whole explicit's better than implicit.
Mm-hmm.
The same way I always go, right? No, that's not what I was thinking of. In Python, you have this thing where exceptions are supposed to be exceptional. Don't use them for flow control.
right. Okay.
Right. Ignore the flow control bit because it's not really applicable here. But exceptions in real life and in networks and in anything have to be exceptional.
Right. Okay.
You can't just have like, here's a screen that was always green and it slightly turns red.
Yeah. Right.
That is like, nobody cares about that. What I
Right.
want is like a ping, an alert, something on my phone, something on my watch. These days, since we have smartwatches, that's an amazing way of getting,
Right.
hi, your
and
network
that's
is up.
only when something is really in trouble, not because I am at 50% capacity.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want things like, hey, I'm at like 48% battery. You don't want notifications on that. You
Yeah.
don't want notifications on things like, hey, so your colleague just SSH to this machine that he
Yeah.
already had access to.
Yeah.
But if you have like, a bunch of failed SSHs, again, you don't actually want notifications of that unless it goes above some threshold,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right?
do-
Because if you have these drive-by attacks like I was talking about earlier, you don't want to get pinged for everyone.
Yeah.
Then you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
desensitized again. That's not an emergency. An emergency is when you have, say, some guy trying to send 35,000 spam messages from your
Mm-hmm.
mail service.
Right.
That you want notifications of.
Okay. So then do you have to customize all these notification scripts or whatever you use to send yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, because the thresholds are a very, very, very organization
Yeah.
dependent thing.
Yep. I would
So
guess.
if you only
Specific,
send
yeah,
300
yeah.
mails a day, sending like even 500 might be like a minor case of what's going on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's kind of similar for us, where a single account usually doesn't send out more than a couple hundred mails a day.
Right.
So if it hits 1,000, we get an alert on that. And actually, if you hit 1,000, it also kills that and stops you from sending more mail. But that means that when you send emails to you do send bulk emails to like parents or something, you have to like take these down for a while for that one account.
So it's very event based and organization specific.
Yeah,
You
it is.
can't have-
There is no
yeah.
way you can have a one-stop just automatically
Solution,
knows
yeah,
everything. People
absolutely.
are gonna be all like, "Hey, we can use machine learning and like do this and that." And as someone, like I can tell you one thing: there is a reason ops people are traditionally very, very conservative with this stuff.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
because as a dev, you can patch and fix something.
Yeah.
When you're running ops, patching and fixing things usually involves spending money.
Yeah, and that's usually something that yeah. I mean, software patches generally very cheap. Hardware
Yeah.
patches usually very expensive.
Yeah, it's also like if there have been vulnerabilities in switches before, and
Right.
upgrading switch firmware means downtime for that switch,
Right.
which means downtime for every switch that has that switch as an upstream.
Yep.
So there is no way to have like a zero downtime upgrade unless you have massively overspec your switches.
Right. So do you have backup switches for this kind of things or?
We run spare inventory, yes, for when things die, but for things like upgrades, I just pick a weekend and go, these 2 floors are going down.
Right. Okay. So you I mean, because you're running in a organization where weekends are off, I guess you have that
Yeah.
that capability
And,
of taking.
Yeah, and in most organizations, if you're running things like for client devices, you can generally pull off something like this.
Right.
But if you have a data center,
Yeah.
I can tell you, like data center switches, you schedule like 1 day a year when you can upgrade it, and that's
Right.
about it. If you miss that window, that's it. Like
Next year.
you have to wait another year.
And especially this is really interesting with the light of all the random stuff that's happening these days, where people are finding all sorts of vulnerabilities in switches online, and there's a whole thing about upgrades and not being able to upgrade, and so I think it's really interesting that if
You know how
in
they
data
say,
centers if they do once a year, that's really scary.
Yeah. You know how they say, right? That the most secure code is code that's not written. But these days, everyone's shoving more and more and more smarts into devices, and that just means more and more vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone can DOS my watch.
I'm pretty sure that's going to happen at some point.
I'm
Cue
sure you
someone
know
running
too.
that app right now.
All right, so we have just one more question for Rahul, but before that, live audience, if you have questions or thoughts for Rahul, please put them in gitter.im/webuildsg/live, and we will ask Rahul after this segment. So Rahul, for the last bit of things, how do you keep learning new things about network infrastructure?
So considering most people listening are more on the dev side and less on the DevOps or even the operations side, the easiest way for you to get more info initially is going to be Hacker News. Every time
Hacker
there's something
News,
new and
okay.
exciting, it turns up on Hacker News.
Yep.
There's also r/sysadmin and r/netsec.
Okay, NetSec. Okay.
Yep. These are very handy. r/sysadmin, unfortunately, is not something that you'd want to follow. It's something you want to pull.
Wait, this is Reddit, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Reddit.
Reddit
Okay.
/r/.
Okay.
Because the problem with r/sysadmin is it's 90% Windows people talking about like domain controllers, and honestly, that doesn't really factor into our world.
Okay.
The other very useful source for things is Nanog,
Okay.
the North American Network Operators Group. They have a mailing list. You just subscribe to that mailing list. You do get some noise in there every now and then, but then it's not that bad.
Okay.
You get that's where you go for like, for example, oh hey, this ISP just started advertising YouTube to the rest of the world. You might want to block them, and you get like advance notice of things like this.
Okay.
It doesn't really affect you because the average person has 2 or 3 ISPs that are in the chain between tier 1 and them, so you don't really have to deal with that very often. But just in case, anyway, Nanog is one source. The other one is just read, because a lot of it is just, hey, I didn't know this RFC existed, for example.
RFC, yes. What about
And-
books, Rahul?
I have not found a good networking book. Honestly.
I was recommended, or rather, so I've been trying to learn about networking, and I have like 2 books. One is Interconnections by Radio Perlman. I think it's really old, but I was told that this is kind of the fundamentals. And the second one is by Andrew S. Tannenbaum.
Right,
The
yes,
guy who-
Tannenbaum's books.
Yes,
generally
he
good.
wrote operating systems, and I also found a book by him about networking. So if you want to get into the fundamentals, maybe these 2 books. Really, really fundamental stuff.
And when he said old book, that's one very important thing. Too often people
Mhm.
discount something just because it's old, especially
Mhm.
Yep.
protocols,
Yep.
and they come up with a newfangled way of doing things.
Mhm.
I mean, here's an example. We had this thing in the 1980s called Resource Location Protocol, I think.
Okay.
The idea was you connect yourself to a network and you auto-discover printers and
Right.
SSH things. Does this
Okay.
sound familiar?
Yes.
Like bonjour.
Yes.
So
Bonjour, yes.
this RLP was reinvented as SLP with some changes.
Right.
And then SLP was an Apple pushed thing that they used
Right.
up until 10.2, I think,
Okay.
when they introduced Rendezvous, which was renamed Bonjour.
Yep. That's
and
AutoConf,
some
right?
UPnP. It's all the general idea of zeroconf, as they
Zero
call it.
conf. Yeah.
Because autoconf implies that you did some config and that automatically hits something.
Right.
Zeroconf implies you don't touch anything.
Yeah.
Everything discovers itself.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how it's very frequent. Like the more you look into history of not just networks, but also a lot of things to do with software engineering, people are just spending all their time reinventing the wheel.
Mhm.
Except in the case of software engineering, there's a lot of reinventing the wheel within the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
within the wheel, the inner platform
Frameworks.
effect, as they call it.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes.
It's insane that you now have Linux running inside a browser, running on top
Mhm.
of some framework, running on top of your kernel, which is also Linux, and then you go,
Mm. Right. Abstractions of abstractions.
Well, it's not really abstractions. It's more
Mhm.
like we're building an OS within an OS within an OS.
Yeah.
And at some point, you just start wondering if that's all worth it, or maybe we should just go back to native.
So don't discount old books and RFCs.
Yeah. Don't
Read the
discount old books.
fundamentals and know why such a protocol was built. Great. So, Chitman, shall we go on to the audience questions? We have a few, right?
Yeah, let's go
If
on.
not, just keep posting. As long as Chinmay is asking Rahul, we will take up your questions. So keep them coming.
Let's
Keep them
go
typing.
on to IO polling. All right, the first question is from Michael. He asks for recommendations for home routers.
Now, see, the problem is that the home router that I used to recommend to most people that didn't want to spend time on their network has been discontinued now. It used to be the Apple Airport Extremes.
Apple Airport.
Yeah.
Oh, they discontinued it.
Yeah, it's been discontinued very, very unfortunately in Apple's new, as I would describe it, misguided approach of let's cut everything that isn't iOS.
Right. Okay. So do you have an alternative?
I've yet to find one that is like great for people that don't want to spend too much time. But if you're willing to spend like a couple of hours, if that, every quarter, then it's a pretty good idea to get something like a router board or a MikroTik or actually, if you just want a router without Wi-Fi, I can recommend the Ubiquiti Edge Router Lite. That has a web UI. It's like you go in, you set it up 10 minutes, you're pretty much done.
Right.
Okay.
That's pretty good for like. I mean, it's not something you can hand off to your parents and have them configure, but it's something you can configure for them once.
It's for the geeky ones, okay.
Yeah.
It's not for the geeky ones. For the geeky ones, you'll be doing the router board or the MikroTik, things with the CLI to control it.
Yep.
Or in my case, I'm using a PC Engines board.
PC Engines, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was like $120. It's cheap. It's really good. It's x86. It runs Linux. I can do whatever I want on it.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi wise, I strongly recommend, even for home use these days, I strongly recommend Ubiquiti.
Yep.
And if you get the,
they're cheap, right? They used to be really expensive. They
used to be really
cheaper.
expensive. Now you can get them like at below 100.
Yep.
The nice thing about them is these days you can get I think it's called the Unified Cloud Key if you don't want to run the controller yourself. But the thing is, the controller honestly it doesn't need to always be running. You fire up the controller on your laptop, you configure your AP, and that's it. It's done.
Okay. And the controller is basically just your client to talk to the AP and set it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I actually run a MikroTik myself, so I will agree that it's super fun. It's super very you can customize a lot of things, but it also means that you have to be able to do a lot of these things if you want to get it up.
Yeah, you want to set aside like 1 or 2 days initially when you configure it.
Agreed. Exactly. Because it's surprising how much stuff like what you were recommending earlier with Apple actually has pre-configured for you.
Yeah.
And then when you start doing it yourself, you're like, what the hell is a hairpin NAT? And why the hell do I need it? And then you're like, yes, of course. That makes sense.
There's also like the QoS stuff. Apple does it automatically for you. They use something that's not actually FQCodel, but very similar to FQCodel.
Yeah.
FQCodel is fair queuing with controlled delay.
Yep. Okay.
So probably one of the best QoS algorithms out there right now.
Okay. Can you get that kind of stuff set up on other routers?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
It's just if the other option to get something that runs DDWRT.
Right. Okay.
In which case, you just fire up the web GUI and it asks you which QoS thing you want enabled.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. The next question is from Bjorn, and he asks a security question. He says, "So I've been hearing about this ping of death and how MIRC warriors can nuke your computer. How can I protect myself?" Oh, sorry, that was wrong. I was going for this. I was going for this.
You need to label your soundboard.
My soundboard is so...
Some stickers or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that soundboard definitely is. It's very amazing when you get the badum-tish when...
Come on.
Yeah.
Once again, Chinmay.
Yeah, so security questions. I've been hearing about this ping of death and how IRC warriors can nuke your computer. How can I protect myself?
Pings of death are just another name for denial of service attacks. You can't really protect
DDoS.
yourself that well from it other than reject the packets and hope upstream doesn't hate you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like the problem with denial of service attacks is you really can't do anything except whoever is providing you internet service could possibly, reject packets that are naughty, right?
But generally, if you're a consumer, what happens is when you get DDoSed, your ISP temporarily kills your internet for a bit.
Yep. and then you have nothing else to do. Just
Yeah.
sit, twiddle your fingers, and I don't know, maybe get like 3G or something.
Yeah, use your LTE connection instead.
All right. Next question from Seb. What are your thoughts on running a CDN from a gigabit internet connection in Singapore? Any ISP limits?
You shouldn't have any problems, except if you're running on a residential connection.
Okay.
You're going to not have lots of fun in the evenings,
Right.
because obviously the ISP also applies quality of service type things, and they try and make it as fair as they can because they only have so much international bandwidth.
Right.
And even local bandwidth, because of the way our OpenNet stuff works,
Mhm.
it is not much fun.
Okay. So
it can be done. Just don't expect to be able to use a full gigabit pipe.
Right. Okay. Also, in general, is the net like outbound connections from Singapore that good in general, or
No?
Okay.
In general, you want to avoid. I mean, if you're covering Southeast Asia, Singapore is amazing,
Okay.
but it's amazing on a relative scale.
Right.
I have seen 150 millisecond latency to Indonesia,
Okay. But
in
then
which time I can hit the US.
But then are the big network centers like Amazon or whatever on a different cable, or because they seem? I mean, there's a bunch
No,
of
they've just paid more.
service. Okay. So they probably get higher.
It's really, yeah, they've
QoS.
just really paid more. That's it.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Next question from Kai. What do you think about IPv6?
I think IPv4 needs to go die in a fire.
Okay.
That's hard.
I'm not a fan of IPv4 at all. NAT is something that NAT is horrible. These days you get
that's network
CG NAT,
address
so you have like network address
translation.
translation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these days you have
CGNet.
carrier grade NAT as well, which now you're behind two NATs,
Yes. So
and it
this
just
is
gets very annoying.
CGNet is especially I don't know. Do any of the telcos do it? I know.
Yes, MyRepublic.
Oh really?
MyRepublic, I'm now going to call you out publicly on the internet. Can you stop issuing 10/8 addresses?
I know the mobile phone 3G networks do that.
Yeah, but the mobile phone networks use proper CGNAT bands.
Okay.
There is a 100.64, I think, that has been reserved for CGNAT. And instead, our dear friends over in MyRepublic go, hey, why don't we use an RFC 1918 set? And all I can think of is maybe you should hire a network engineer.
Yeah, because you shouldn't be giving out 10 dot to non-internal networks, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That breaks a lot of best practices.
All right, cool. And the last question we have is, do you have a hardware list for engineers? Wait, what was it?
Network engineers. Like,
Okay.
what are your tools of the trade? Like for
Tools of the
hardware?
trade. You want a laptop as light as you can get
Because you want to run around?
because you will be walking around.
And this laptop has to be Linux,
It can be either Linux or OS 10. It doesn't really matter.
Linux or OS 10. Okay, not
because,
Windows 98.
I mean, you can use Windows. It's perfectly fine. Just make sure you have a Linux VM in it.
Okay, okay.
You also want a USB serial dongle.
Okay.
You want to make sure
a lot
that
of stuff. Finally, if everything dies, talks serial.
literally everything talks serial.
Nice.
Even at home, I have like 2 switches and a router. All of them use serial.
Mhm.
I mean, I can SSH to them, but if it breaks, then serial's the only way to get to them. And also Ethernet dongle if your laptop, which because it's light, should not actually have Ethernet built in.
Okay.
MacBooks, yeah.
Well, no, literally everything you buy these days that's light doesn't have built-in
Oh,
Ethernet.
because and somehow you said as light as possible.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you generally get it. Yeah.
Because honestly, like 90% of your job is just going to be a keyboard, a terminal, and a web browser.
Uh-huh.
You don't really need power, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Cool.
Cool. So those are the tools of the trade. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
That's all the questions we have for now. Let's move on to the next round, which is called Rapid Fire. I got my sound effects right for the one.
Yes, finally.
I know.
Someone
All right.
say you're really good at shooting bullets.
Yes. So Rapid Fire, as you know, quick questions. You don't have to be politically correct. I don't think you're ever politically correct, so I don't.
Politics,
have to say that.
what is that?
So first question: VI or Emacs?
Emacs is a symlink to Vim.
Okay.
Oh, oops.
So Emacs lovers can go eat it anyway.
Byte.
Byte, yes. Favorite website for getting your geek news fix?
Reddit and Hacker News.
Reddit and Hacker News. Cool. Current favorite video game or board game? I know you like both.
Yeah. Current favorite board game is going to be Codenames.
code names.
Yes,
Okay.
look it up. It's fun. Current favorite video game at the moment is Factorio. If you're a programmer or if you're a network engineer or anything to do with technology, you will love that game.
Factorio.
Factorio.
Okay. I know Rahul loves to play all these indie games, so it must be really cool. All right. The next geek toy or gadget you're looking forward to buy.
Next geek toy or gadget.
Anything you are really eyeing?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Wow. Rahul's content with what he has.
Yeah.
What's the next tool, language, or framework you want to learn or pick up?
Still working on picking up Rust.
Rust. Okay.
You gotta make sure you don't get rusty with it.
Yeah, I mean, like, let's put it this way: the language name is very appropriate. You spend like a year doing it, and you're still like, wow, I'm still learning new things every day.
I'm still rusty.
Wow, this is so rusty. Anyway, what's your favorite sci-fi book or movie?
I like Starship Troopers only if you don't take it in the way the author meant it, but you take it ironically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, ironic Starship Troopers. Current favorite meetup group in Singapore?
There are lots
Papers We
of
Love,
Papers
because
We
that's
Love,
where I
yeah.
get a lot of exposure to things that I normally wouldn't bother reading.
That's true. It's like the lazy meetup, right? People read out papers to you.
Yeah, and it's also like for most meetups, you turn up for the Python meetup because you do Python. You turn up for the Go meetup because you do Go. You turn up for JavaScript meetup because you do JavaScript.
Uh-huh.
But when you turn up for this, you have no idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. I mean,
is very true.
it always blows your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting for the chicken paper, but still.
You could do it. You should do it.
Sure.
Yeah, or we could get Meng to do it. I think it would be more funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, last question. Is there... Oh, actually, I would ask you this one. What's your favorite programming language?
Rust.
Okay.
Rust. Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much for answering our rapid fire round. And now we'll move on to the next section. That's picks. The way picks works is we go around a table. We'll give you some time, Rahul, to think about your picks. We'll start with Sani, then me and Rahul. And the idea is to pick two to three interesting things, blogs, books, apps, foods, meetups, whatever that you want our audience to try out. So do you want to start with the picks, Sani?
Yes, this year I started wearing a wearable. Finally, my
Sani
wrist is
so hipster. She starts wearing wearables.
I got a Mi Band, a Xiaomi Band, and I started pairing it with my iPhone, and I started tracking the sleep. I'm really excited about the sleep function because it vibrates on my wrist and wakes me up. It actually can count how long I sleep, how long I deep sleep. Maybe it's not so accurate because it doesn't really do my retina eye motion tracking, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I can get calls on my Mi Band, so if somebody's calling on my
Well, you
phone,
just get notifications. not calls.
notifications, yes.
Because if
But-
you get calls, that would
No,
be
no,
really
no.
weird. Because you're like holding your watch to your ear, like,
Yeah.
hello, I can't hear you, hello.
Hey, I do that sometimes. When your hands are all like really busy, the best you can do is poke a button on your watch and go, "Can I call you back in 5 minutes?"
Oh, so you wear Rahul? You wear iWatch or?
I wear an Apple Watch, yes.
Okay, Apple Watch. So there you go. So yeah, try out some kind of wearable and pair it with your handphone and see what you can do. Yeah.
Cool. Is that the only pick you have?
Yes, I do.
All right,
Yeah.
good. I have two picks. The first is KaiCAD. I think I've picked this before.
Mhm.
KaiCAD is a tool for making schematics and PCB layouts. It's open source. And recently, its main competitor, Eagle, so this is for electronics, by the way, just went from a freeware / paid for like freemium kind of model to a paid subscription kind of model. So KaiCAD has basically become now the de facto standard of anybody sort of doing small little hobbyist projects. Check it out; it's super awesome. There's a lot of tutorials now. There's a forum called kaikad.info that does a lot of tutorials and questions and stuff. It's really matured well now. And my second pick is this interesting IC from the manufacturer Scilabs. It's called the EFM32. It's a Cortex M0 based IC. It's a small little microcontroller. So basically it's nothing special about the microcontroller except it's really small. It's a 24-pin package. And the best part is it has a USB physical layer built in. So you can actually do USB stuff. You can do serial port, like a console USB thing, like how you plug in Arduino and you can get console to it. Something similar with it. It's super cheap, super easy. It has a lot of the stuff built in, so you don't really need any components. In fact, just with like 5 or 6 passives around it, you can have a USB setup very, very easily. So if you wanted to get USB connected to your electronics, the EFM32 Happy Gecko it's called. It's super awesome from Scilabs. So those are my 2 picks. Rahul, picks?
My pick is going to be a book that I've just started reading.
Great.
It's called
books.
Hacker's Delight by
Ooh.
what's his face? Something Warren, Henry Warren, I think.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
this,
it's Hank Warren.
right.
Hank
Okay,
Warren.
it's some Warren. So it's called the
Uh-huh.
book's called Hacker's Delight. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on a Kindle, whatever.
Kindle.
It's
yep.
a book that basically covers as it's almost like code golf in a book. So he starts talking about algorithms to do
Mhm.
certain tasks, and then it's sort of like what's the minimum number of operations, or how fast can we make this go?
Ah.
So
So it's about algorithms and
it's
what is
about
it?
algorithms
Efficiency.
in a way that most
Mhm.
people don't usually think of unless they're working in the embedded space, I guess, because
Okay, okay.
size is important there, speed's important there.
Interesting.
Hey, that's gonna be my next book. Thanks, Rahul. Yeah. What else?
I think that's about it.
All right.
Okay,
Cool.
cool.
Thanks for doing picks. And let's move on to the next segment, which is
Event Loop. This is where we tell all our listeners and audience that, hey, apart from online reading and podcasting, go and meet people in events. So the next up we have on 1st Feb, which is the Hackware Internet of Things special. It's going to be at Google APAC headquarters in Singapore. So if you are in Singapore on 1st Feb evening, come down and join us. The next event is Force Asia.
Force Asia is happening
It's
again.
going to happen in Singapore again.
Yep, it's at the 17th to 19th of March
Okay.
at the Science Center, and they are looking for speakers. So if you have a project that's really interesting, it doesn't have to be software.
Mhm.
In fact, they're specifically looking for hardware projects and like biohacking projects.
Okay.
So if you have interesting projects that you think would be relevant to sort of the open source, open community, open source ideologies, do submit talks. They are absolutely looking for speakers. They always have issues having enough local speakers. But in general, otherwise, do attend a conference. It's really fun. You get people from all over the region coming down and sharing some really cool stuff that they're working on.
Yay, so go and attend events, make some friends, hear something that you have never known before.
Yep.
And the last segment is called Electric Plug. So this is where Rahul will tell us how to connect with him. Rahul, how can people connect with you?
You can find me on Twitter. That's twitter.com/agrahul, which is my backup username that I use because someone has taken twitter.com/rahulg. On GitHub, you can find me at github.com/rahulg. There's a bunch of really weird projects there. Some may be to your interest, some may not. I am working on something kind of fun that I might be releasing later this week. If all goes well.
Does it involve an IoT wrap?
It does not involve an IoT wrap, but it does involve networks.
Networks.
Okay, good.
Sounds fun.
Cool.
Actually, Rahul has a lot of interesting projects that you should check out. One of the ones that I use a lot is a Chrome plugin. I think we probably have it for Firefox as well, which strips off all the random crap at the end of a URL.
It's called DUrchin.
For advertising stuff.
Yeah,
right?
If you click on a link and they have all this crap at the end that tells them where you came from and just annoys the heck out of me.
So
it's
Rahul
okay
built
when it's in
that.
your browser, but when you copy paste in a link to someone in Facebook chat or something, and you find the link is like 35 megabytes by itself, that's insane.
Yes.
So it's there for both Firefox and Chrome.
Yes. So
Great.
there's a lot of small little gadgets that Rahul makes that I use here and there. So
Small little scripts, gadgets.
There's also something that Claudio, who's in the chat, and I built.
Yes.
Called We.
How
It's
do you spell?
WHEEE, I think.
Okay. And what does that do?
If you have a browser tab that's playing audio and you close it, it plays the classic cartoon rewind thingy.
Okay.
You just install it, try it out. It's fun.
Okay.
Right,
We will
okay.
definitely include the links to the show notes for all of this.
Yes, we will have all of this in the show notes.
Yay, Claudio, you got to mention.
Oh, right. One last thing I'd like
Yes.
to plug. If you run VMs on OS X a lot,
Yes.
there was this lovely little project called Xhive a while ago
Okay.
that I think I've talked about before.
So this is the stuff that uses the
it uses
hypervisor
the native
framework.
hypervisor framework built
Right.
into the OS,
Yeah.
and
A
these days it's been-
lightweight OS X virtualization
Yeah.
solution. It's on
it's
GitHub.
been superseded by Docker's HyperKit these days.
Okay.
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 So the Xhive upstream is basically that. HyperKit's where all the fun stuff is.
Mhm.
But I do have a cute little tool that I use to run my VMs called Hive,
Uh-huh.
which is also on my GitHub page. You basically have a little INI file and one command, boom, VM. The CPU usage is absolutely minimal compared to things like VirtualBox.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, this is something that I really enjoyed with Docker, but I guess I should try this out as well.
Yeah, it's like if you just want VMs to run stuff.
Yeah.
So on all my laptops, I have one VM called my dev environment that runs Arch Linux, which I do everything in.
Mhm.
The macOS bit for me is more a browser and a UI than
Sure.
it is like a core
Sure.
thing.
Cool. I should check that out. That sounds really interesting.
Yay! So thank you, Rahul, for joining us for this episode 42 of
Thanks for
WeBuild
having
Live.
me.
Yes, we really enjoyed it. Thanks to the live audience as well for joining us today morning.
Yeah, they were very tame. They didn't troll too much. I'm actually quite surprised.
We learned a lot about computer network infrastructure, a lot to play with as well, with a
Yeah.
lot of things that Rahul mentioned. So that's it for this week's episode 42 of WeBuild Live. We will come together again online on another Saturday morning with another cool guest. Until then, return zero.